Joining us now is Tony Arterburn. Always great to have Tony on at Wise Wolf Gold. And of course, he's also set up davidknight.gold to let him know that you're coming through us. And we're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about gold. What is going on with gold? What's going on with Fort Knox? They keep bringing this up. And it's kind of funny, isn't it, Tony, how many times they brought up Fort Knox, but yet they never do anything about it, right? And so you got Jesse Waters interviewing Scott Bessent. And this is reported from, I see this on Twitter, some account called Wall Street Gold said, Fort Knox gold confirmed. And they got it all uppercase. They got a flashing ambulance. It's like nothing was confirmed. Do you believe a word that anybody in this regime says about anything? But of course, it's not been audited. And that's the reality. Even when they've had their show visits, nothing has been audited. Nothing has been validated. There's not been any verification of what is there, the quantity or the quality of it at all. And so they say Fort Knox gold is confirmed. And we have over $1 trillion in gold. Isn't that great news, Tony? We have $40 trillion worth of debt, and we got $1 trillion worth of gold. I'd say that we have bankruptcy is confirmed here, wouldn't you?
Well, that, it is interesting. They dangle this Fort Knox audit, and they have been, even in the first Trump administration, there was some word about that. They were going to look into it, and Trump mentioned it, just offhandedly. But the second Trump administration, that was something part of Doge, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And we're going to look at our assets and everything else. And it never went anywhere. It is a huge question mark. It was supposed to be, it's over 4,000 tons of gold that are in Fort Knox. It's about half of the supposed holdings of the United States. And that supposedly we're still the world's leader in gold holdings. I don't believe that. I think the Chinese have overtaken us some years back because of their secret gold buying. But it's interesting. They continue to float it. Nothing really happens, and it's I don't know if it's to keep the world guessing or something like. My friend, one of my friends, sent me a meme yesterday, and it said Gold Knox audit starter kit, and it was a can of gold spray paint and a lead brick.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, this tweet that was part of this article here on Zero Hedge. Yeah, Fort Knox gold confirmed, over $1 trillion in gold, the largest gold pile in the world. Isn't that great? Like I said, we got $40 trillion in debt. We got $1 trillion in gold. We got probably $160 trillion and unfunded mandates and obligations when you look at Social Security and other things like that. So, yeah, the bankruptcy is writ large for anybody who wants to take a look at it. But he also made another interesting statement, Scott Bessent did. When he's talking to Jesse Waters, he said, well, America used to be backed by gold, and silver, he said. And the important word there is used to be, right? Yeah. Not anymore. The emperor, we have an empire that is nothing other than naked tyranny. The emperor has no clothes, and he's got no money in his purse either.
It was interesting. There was a tweet on Gold Telegraph last week. I talked about it on my show, and it said in the monetary history of the United States, the dollar used to be backed by gold, then it was backed by oil, and now it's backed by psychology. It's just backed by belief. It's kind of like Tinkerbell. If you don't clap, Tinkerbell dies. And that is the point of history in which we are right now. And it's funny because I was looking at the headlines on Kitco, and the markets are not rational, as you can see.
Oh yeah.
If you look at where the world is headed, and we talk about this every week, but it's more and more evidence just stacking up. The world's not creating a different reserve currency to compete with the dollar. Is going to be regional currencies, cross-border payment system, blockchain, all the rest of that. But what they are building, and the central banks continue to be very bullish on and buying at a record pace, is gold. They're buying gold. Gold will be the new medium of exchange, even in the face of everything that's happening right now, David. As you know, we look back at the beginning of the year. What fundamentals have changed? Have things gotten better with geopolitical uncertainty? Have things gotten better with the national debt and fiscal responsibility? Absolutely not. All the things that drove gold to $5,600 an ounce back in January and February are still there, but we pulled back below 4,000 today, and there's a lot of reasons why. Not real valid reasons, but they are reasons. I mean, you look at the price of crude oil hitting $80, the uncertainty around the Strait of Hormuz. You have the nomination of Warsh And Warsh was supposed to come in and lower rates and be this very dovish extension of what Trump policy has always claimed they wanted, which was a weaker dollar. I think this is a huge head fake. He's not going to raise rates. I don't believe that they will, even in the face of inflation, because it would damage the economy. You and I both know that. I
Well,
mean,
they can't even service the debt if he were to raise it up like Paul Volcker did. They
not
couldn't
even
even make an
close.
interest rate payment. So, yeah.
No, not even close. So you've got this weird point of history that we're in, and the market's using old metrics, a previous system and a previous reality to judge the current prices of things, which is lucky for all of us. I mean, the first thing I did this morning, I saw gold below 4,000. Well, I'm buying some inventory.
Yeah.
I'm a buyer, when I see stuff like that, because I know that fundamentally this is all fake. And I mean, as nicely as I can put it, the market is irrational, and some of these so-called experts are not going to look really good in 2 or 3 years when this all shakes out. I mean, what is the next shoe to drop when the price of oil continues to cut into the standard of living of people all around the world, when the economy slows, supply chains are further disrupted? I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
as fragile as everything is, and you think that it's funny because, like, oh, well, they're going to raise rates because inflation's high because the cost of oil went up. That's irrational.
It
And
is.
even if
Yeah.
inflation is higher, then gold should be higher. And so to say that it should be lower, I think, is the clown world economics that we're in right now.
It is. And when you look at what Trump's policies are doing, constantly adding more burdens to us, right? Putting taxes at the border, all kinds of tariffs, making things more expensive. The oil embargo that he has created with all of this stuff. And it is, no relief in terms of regulatory stuff that's going to make anything cheaper. It's just one burden after the other. The other one being the massive electricity rates that are going to be kicking online here in terms of data centers coming online. And so that's going to make our businesses less competitive. It's going to take thousands of dollars out of our pockets. They're talking about how for millions of households, they're going to have billions of dollars, and I forget how many tens of billions of dollars increase in electrical costs that are there. Because if it was floating right now at market prices, they have some regulatory restrictions on it. And or if it was just floating at what their real costs were, it would have gone up over 70%. And so you're going to gradually see that coming into your electric bill. It's going to be yet another burden put on your back by the Trump administration with its, clear out everything for the data centers, everything for our surveillance technology, nothing for you type of aspect. So all this stuff is going to come home to roost. They're going to want to not raise interest rates in that kind of an economic environment, whether or not they could afford to do so with the interest rate payments that they would have to make to service the debt. They're not going to want to do such an obvious move that would really tank the economy that's already going down.
It's good that I didn't pay attention in school, in the public school system. I did my own thing. I worried a lot of people when I was growing up. I read my own books and look at, I was interested in stuff that was outside of the curriculum. It's a good thing too, David, because I looked another headline that I saw today was that gold also fell in the face of new retail sales. Now, if you read that, you think, wow, the economy's doing better because there's higher sales. Do you know what makes sales higher? Inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
something costs, from $1 to $1.50, and it's the same margin, and you sold the same amount of widgets, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't make any more money because your cost went up to sell the same product. So that's a magic trick. And if you don't understand, like if you never actually ran a business, that probably escapes you. But that's a literal headline. I mean,
Uh,
prove it. Prove that
and so what it
sales.
does is it bumps you into a higher tax bracket. So
Yes,
they tax.
pay
That's
a
the thing
higher
about
tax.
inflation. They tax you on the devaluation of the currency that they create.
In a
Yeah.
modern any type of sound economy, if there's if things are real and there's a free market, prices go down, folks.
Yeah.
Things are deflationary. Your money actually should be just as strong or stronger 50 years on and 5 years on and whatever. Same thing we had in the 19th century. There was periods where we had slight inflation. You had, Lincoln's greenbacks. There's a couple of periods, but throughout the 19th century, on average, there's no inflation. I mean, if whatever cost, if you had bought a set of clothes to go to George Washington's inaugural, that same set of clothes cost you the same in 1902. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically no
Mm-hmm.
inflation throughout the 19th century. So inflation is something that only comes through fake money and a Marxian central bank system, which is in the Communist Manifesto. I think it's the fifth plank is to have a central bank and it's control of the money supply outside of the free market. So prices should go down. And that's the thing about, you and I talk about gold and silver every week and what the prices of commodities are. It's all relative because we're talking about fake money against real assets.
Mm-hmm.
David, did
Mm-hmm.
you know that in the last 25 years, the world has consumed more copper than the previous set of human history beforehand?
Wow.
In the
Wow.
last 25 years, with all the all the things being built for the information age, copper, that's a precious metal, by the way. I mean, we deal a little bit in it, but copper is a glue that holds the world together, all of civilization mostly. And then the next in line of that is silver. So
Mm-hmm.
all these things against the dollar, to me, I'm bullish on long term because I know what the dollar is. It's built on psychology. If you don't believe in it, it goes away. And guess what? The world is stopping to believe. Like the belief, we should have a belief meter. It's not just dollar usage, but acceptability of the psychology of the rest of the world.
Well, the silver lining in all of this, except it's not silver, is that your kids are going to be millionaires.
Right.
That was the
Dan Aykroyd
headline
said.
on a puff piece cheering Trump's Trump accounts for kids. Right, the Treasury
Oh,
will give you $1,000 for your child if they were born after Trump became president. And then, of course, you can put money into that account as well. So they said, so if you do all this stuff, your kid could be a millionaire. And I immediately looked at that and I thought back to the last time we saw massive price inflation because of a global oil disruption. And I remember the joke that people had at the time. Of course, back then you had phone booths, right? Which I guess we should put a footnote there to explain it to some people who don't remember those things. But this guy is in a state of suspended animation. He wakes up 50 years in the future and which would be about today, and he makes a phone call to find out what's going on, and he decides to call his bank and see if they still have his bank account. Not only did they not close it out, which a bank would do, but it's now, because of compound interest, a little bit that he had there is now worth a couple $1 million. And he goes, this is great. And then the operator comes online and says, please deposit $50,000 for the next minute. And that's what made me think about these Trump accounts. It's like, yeah, all of our kids are going to be millionaires. That's the good news. The bad news is it isn't going to buy anything. It's just monopoly
yeah.
money.
I think you've played it before on the show, but back in the late 70s, Dan Aykroyd did that skit on Saturday Night Live playing Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we're going to make everybody a millionaire, because of inflation. Through inflation, we'll all become millionaires.
That's right.
That's so true. That is really the issue is when you have an economy built on liquidity injections and printing more, which we do now, like beyond any scope we've ever done before. And there really wasn't any real quantitative easing, I believe, until the 1990s. I think that started under Greenspan,
Yeah.
but
He laid
it
the
was
foundation for that.
laid the
Yeah.
foundations for. But before that, there really wasn't any. I mean, there was tricks that were made, and the borrowing from the Fed and the rest, and T-bills and stuff. But it wasn't like true central bank intervention out in the open
Mm-hmm.
until
Mm-hmm.
like the last 30 years. So you can
And
see
by the way, Tony, we've mentioned this several times. That quantitative easing is back. They're just not talking about it. Everybody talks about the interest rates. This is the part of the iceberg that's above the surface. The massive part of the iceberg that's below the surface that you don't see is the quantitative easing, and the Federal Reserve is growing that rapidly.
yeah, it's got its tentacles in everything, and controlling the financial reality in a way that skews it like a funhouse mirror. And it
Mm-hmm.
creates like this upside down understanding of economics. It's like what I'm seeing right now. I mean, the fundamentals of what drove gold to record prices and silver, I mean, at $120 an ounce, all that stuff's still there, and worse, by the way. It's worse.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
even if you look at the demand for things, especially silver and some of these industrial metals, is off the charts. and
Mm-hmm.
even the deficits every year. But so much of it's papered over, so much of it's controlled. And it's funny. You may disagree of this, but I've been looking at this like the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the spike in the price of oil, it has given the dollar, or those who control the dollar, some breathing room, because it strengthens the dollar in the sense that it creates this false impression that its main competitor is not a safe haven asset. And
Yeah,
that's but
that's right.
one of the things they've been doing to gold since the 70s, since Volcker, and especially since the Hunt family, and driving silver to $52 an ounce in 1980. And I say they were deep stated. I mean, I think they were taken on by the deep state. I think it was exposing the true lie of fiat currency. But if you look at what's happening now, this is a perfect scenario if you wanted to buy some time to keep the dollar so-called stronger, without really raising interest rates or doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can use misdirection and say, well, this is caused by Iran
Mm-hmm.
and the oil supply shock.
And we
But
don't
at the
know who
same
caused Iran, do we? It just happened like the pandemic thing happened, right?
right,
Who knows that these things just happened? The pandemic did
the
it to us.
invisible enemy.
Iran did it to us. Iran war. We don't know how that got caused.
Yeah, it's the invisible enemy, like the 9/11 hijackers and the
That's right.
COVID 1984. You can't see it.
That's
But
right.
same thing. You can't see what Iran's actually doing, but they're definitely closing the Strait of Hormuz through these actions, and yeah, it's really landing right. I think it's an opportunity to those who control the dollar.
I agree. Yeah. Here's an article from sovereign.com. On July 7th, Bloomberg published an article with the headline, Gold's bull market has ended, and now all eyes are on the bears, saying that retail investors have headed for the exits. But they point out the same day, the Chinese central bank reported its largest monthly gold purchases since 2023. They are buying the dip. And as they point out, and it's accurate because it's what you've been saying, Tony, the price is not the story. The story is what central banks are doing because they were the ones that were the dominant force on the run up of gold since 2022. And the central banks have bought nearly an all time record in 2024. Now, the massive demand that ran gold up, they said the price has nearly doubled. Central banks buying slowed to 863 tons in 2025, but it's still higher than the historical averages, but it's down 21% from the year before. Nevertheless, the central banks are not trading, trying to chase momentum. And that's what the retail trade typically does. It's like, what asset
Right.
is going up? Let me buy that because it's going up. No, they're looking at long-term value. They're looking at it from the perspective of savers who are accumulating a reserve asset. And like any sensible saver, they buy less when the thing that they are saving gets expensive, it gets expensive. So they buy less when the price goes up. Now that it's going down, they're, as you point out, loading up the truck. They backed it up and they're loading it up. They bought only 27 tons in all of 2025, the Chinese central bank did. They bought, however, 40 tons in just the first 6 months of this year. So they're
Crazy.
buying it at a rate that's almost 4 times what they bought in 2025.
Yeah. Central banks, if you like net purchases, even with the downturn and even with the sell-offs of places like Turkey and Russia
Mm-hmm,
and India that were putting some on the market, it was still 17 tons net in like April. I mean,
mm-hmm.
even with the sell-offs of these, large gold holdings, and that was for liquidity
That's right.
or energy, right? If the United States into World War II, 1944, right before the end, you had Bretton Woods, and gold was set at $35 an ounce. Officially, we'd held that since 1933, and it was said this is the world's reserve currencies now, the dollar, and that's why we haven't had an audit of Fort Knox since the 50s. That was been our hand. Like we had so much tons of gold, we're the world's leader and all of that, and it never really had to be accounted for. One of the reasons that Nixon took us off the gold standard is because these other countries noticed something. In 1965, we took the silver out of our coin, started debasing our own our coinage and our currency. I think the world took notice of how much we were spending, how much we were borrowing, the Cold War, the Great Society on the Mekong, as Lyndon Johnson called it. And so the world took notice. They tried to cash their their gold or dollar holdings in for gold at the gold window. Even De Gaulle sent the president of France sent his warships over to pick up the gold. So we went off the gold standard because the gold reserves weren't there to back up, all the money supply that we had created throughout the world.
Hmm.
And that's held even with that psychology all through those years is held through where we are today. But the world's not. And you talk about these central banks. These aren't retail investors looking for value, looking for the next 10% or 15% return. They're looking for the new system, and that's the rub. That's
Hmm.
what's really
Hmm.
it's not just these fly by night investors and speculators, because that's what makes the volatility. That's what makes this whipsaw back and forth. Well, with the structure and the bones of the new system are going to be built on gold, and you can quote me on that. It's happening. I mean, it's so
Hmm.
apparent to me.
Hmm.
That's what's happening. It's not about a new currency. The currency already is gold. It's We're going to use technology. I mean, he had Putin last week or so telling some of the countries in the Asian sphere, um, you know, let's use local currencies. Let's see to trade with each other and through the ruble.
Hmm.
Like interlinking things with blockchain, and they're just using it for cross-border payments and abandoning the dollar. It's just part of de-dollarization.
That's right. And when you talk about, a lot of people say, well, we went off the gold standard there with Bretton Woods 2, went to the petrodollar. And yet the U.S. government was really off of the gold standard before that, weren't they? Because they weren't, they were spending far more than the gold that they had, and everybody knew it, as you just pointed out. So there was a pledge, basically, that they were going to use gold to back their currency, and yet they continued to print more and more currency. So they broke that promise, and people called them out on it. So then they came up with a petrodollar, which is now dead. And so if you have a situation where the dollar is going to be the reserve currency, people are looking at this, especially the central banks, and saying, this American government is overextended. It's unpredictable. We don't want to trust that or that system. That's what you're talking about as the bricks and gold. The gold bricks, how about that? As that is being put out as a secondary alternative to it, because as you point out, gold is not a counterparty risk to anybody. And nobody wants the counterparty risk of this particular government. They go on to say, if you're a trader, if you're somebody who's out there trading and you're trying to accumulate paper dollars, then you're kind of concerned about this 28% drop in the price of gold off of its peak. But again, this is a glass half full or half empty. Is it twice as much as it was a couple of years ago, or is it down 28% from what it was a few months ago before this unusual war? So you can look at it from a couple of different ways. But the perspective that the central banks are taking is that one of a saver who's trying to accumulate gold, not paper fiat currency. And that really is what this article is about. They really nailed it, I think.
I think so too. I mean, the premise is if you're looking at history and you look at the 20th century, like that period after World War II, the rest of the world primarily used dollars.
Hmm.
And that was the American dominated system until the end of the 20th century, going into the 21st. The issue now, if you look back at the history of central banks, David, if you go back to even 2008, um, before 2009, the rate of central bank gold buying was almost zero. It's
Yeah.
almost zero. Like they just held dollars, they held treasuries, and they held the euro or whatever, and it wasn't considered that big of a deal. Like a lot, they had some of their gold left over from World War II era, the early 20th century, but that was primarily a holding of currencies.
Hmm.
Well, that's gone away, and further and further every day we get further and further away from that reality. I mean, we're not going back to that anytime soon, and the erosion of trust is the issue.
I agree.
The
It's the
erosion.
same thing that happened when they went to the petrodollar. It's like we had an agreement. We had essentially a trust that you broke, and you're printing more paper than you got gold. And so the same type of thing has happened with the sanctions that were enacted by Biden and the actions that Trump has done in terms of sanctions and many other things. We have shown that we can't be trusted. We've broken that trust. We said, hey, we got a system here. Trust us. Well, that's done now.
It is done, and it will be this will be the age of precious metals. I think the rest of this century, as the world consolidates more of its currencies and holdings backed by something finite instead of infinite. And then the experiment of fiat is coming to an end. The American dominated fiat system, and history doesn't show us any examples where a fiat currency, especially a reserve currency of the entire planet, lasts that
Mm-mm.
long. I mean, the lifespan is usually about 26 years for a fiat currency all throughout history. There is no exceptions. They burn out, and it's just mathematics. And I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
dollar will be reset upon something else. And it's not, we talk, you and I spoke about it all throughout these years. With the dollar's not going to zero, it's going to digital. I think we have to be aware of that. It's going to be on the backs of some, stable coin.
And there you have a situation where it's not just about preserving the value of your money, but it's about preserving your privacy when that happens. That's the other flip side of that coin, flip side of the digital coin. They even do a fiat system, Tony, when they're talking about the gold coins that they're printing. Yeah, Jesse Waters, when he's talking to Scott Bessent, they started talking about the coins, the Trump coins that he's going to mint. And of course, they're going to do a 24 karat gold commemorative coin. They're only going to make 47 of them, and they're going to cost $90,000 a piece. And we've talked about this in the past too, how a lot of these big gold traders out there will sell you collectible coins and really inflate the price of this stuff. It's like, I don't think this thing is going to weigh several pounds, for it to be $90,000 or whatever. What is it? What would that have to be? I guess about 20 ounces or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's the grift on it. If you don't know what the coin value is, or blue sky, or numismatic, I mean, you can get lost in that stuff. Just stick to the basics. What's the price of gold? What's the price of silver?
But he does know where they started talking about, well, wait a minute, is it legal to put Trump's face on a coin? And he goes, well, you got to understand there's a difference between coins and currency. When it comes to currency, no, we can't put his face on the currency. I have to put in God we trust. He goes, that's, but I can't put a face on there. Those are the two things. But he goes, when we're talking about a coin, we can put anything we want to on there. And there's the rub, isn't it? That's the constitutional difference that, what they've been doing is not constitutional money. And that is the thing that we always go back to. Why did the founders want to have gold and silver? And the government was not supposed to be creating currency. It was supposed to be minting coins. All right, welcome back. And we're talking to Tony Artaban at Wise Wolf Gold. And again, you can get there through davidknight.gold. Let them know that you're coming through us. We were just talking about the coins. And isn't it fitting that Trump got rid of the penny, and now he's coming out with a $1 coin with his face on it? That's the king of inflation. Because if you go back and you look at it before the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, probably that penny that they had back then in 1912 had purchasing power that was greater than the $1 coin that Trump's going to put his face on.
That's true. And you got to factor in too, I think up until 1982, the pennies were made with real copper.
Yeah.
And like I said, the price of copper. I mean, we got rid of the penny, but we weren't even using real copper since 1982.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is fitting that, you get a president who's done so much damage to the dollar and fiscal responsibility and purchasing power of the dollar, through things like the liquidity injections during COVID.
And the
debt. I'm looking at the print and the debt.
Yeah.
Yes, and the debt, the unnecessary wars, and the shock to the dollar and the monetary system with the Iran war, the unnecessary war. It is interesting. I'm looking at the image right now on Kickstarter of the actual $1 coin. It's we're in Saddam Hussein territory, I guess, where we're gonna, and then the Brits do that. They put them, the king or the queen on their currency. And how'd that end up for them? I mean, it hasn't gone for the pound sterling either.
It's very telling, isn't it? Tell us what's going on at Wise Wolf. Anything different that's happening there?
Well, next week I should have, we've got a promotion coming up. I don't have the details yet, but we're going to have a promotion for Wolfpack. So hold off, till next week. If you're thinking about joining, there's a new promo code we're going to do. It's going to have a giveaway of a $20 gold piece. I've got a graded one. It's from pre-1933 gold that I've got. And so a few other things we're going to be giving a big July through August, maybe to September, doing a big giveaway of stuff for new signups and
just to remind people, one of the things that you do that is very, very different is Wolfpack itself. And what Wolfpack is a way for people to set up a savings program. We were just talking about, do you want to save in paper currency that's constantly losing its value, or do you want to save in gold and silver? Well, if you want to save in gold and silver, you can determine how much you want to set aside each month. And of course, people can cancel it anytime they want, but you can set different tiers. And what you do is you do group buys, and it gets a good price on these smaller denominations of stuff, I guess we could call it. You know, when you really make small amounts of gold or silver at the lower levels, you can go down as low as $50 a month and on up. And so that is a great thing that Tony does at Wise Wealth that I don't know anybody else does.
Nobody else does it exactly like we do it. There are some subscription services, nothing close. We really reverse engineered the system for people to buy precious metals. And the larger companies, they don't really care if you got $50 or $500. They just don't. It's not their business model. But it's mine. And I think if you're a regular everyday person and you want to set aside some fiat currency every month and put it on automatic, you let us buy your metals for you. And that's really what it is. And we've been doing this for over 4 years now. And Wise Wolf, by the way, Wise Wolf Gold, Silver, Bitcoin, we just got our trademark. It took me 8 years. It took me 8 years. I tried so many different ways, and finally I just said, okay, we're going to try it. We're going to try it this way when I finally got it. So
Wow.
that was miles. We did the same thing for Wolfpack. So I think it's a little bit of an achievement for the team here. We've been working just to carve out our niche, but we're very proud to sponsor shows like yours and have been since the beginning. And
Hmm.
even
That's right.
a long time now we've been sponsoring your show. And you can go to davidknight.gold. Yeah, thanks for doing that, David. You always plug for me. I always forget. Davidknight.gold, and then there's a link on there if you want to check out Wolfpack. Just hit the link that says join Wolfpack, and it'll show you like wolfpack.gold, which is our subscription service, and as low as 50 a month. You
Well,
can
it's a
start.
great service. And again, if you really want to save on something that is worth saving, as opposed to something that is going to become essentially toilet paper, you can fill your wheelbarrow up with it and go buy a loaf of bread in the not too distant future, I'm afraid. Or even worse, they turn it into something digital where they take away your wheelbarrow altogether. You won't be able to go anywhere because they're going to debank you and control you because they don't like what you're doing or whatever. That's the important thing, that kind of independence that it gives us. And so I really like the idea of physical gold and silver. I really like what you're doing, Tony. Really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick break, folks.
Real quickly before that,
Yeah.
we do have a question for Tony from
I didn't see that.
Hatchcar61. It says a new futures exchange opened in Hong Kong in which all contracts are settled in PM. Will this up to start price discovery in PM? A little bit of a mess at the end, but how's that going to affect things basically?
Well, that's a great question because this is something I've been covering, if you've been listening to me, for the last couple of years. I'm like, hey, this is one of the biggest stories. It's not
Hong
only
Kong.
Shanghai, it's Hong Kong, and it's physical gold storage. And they're looking to do satellites, Singapore and other places, especially in the Asian sphere, where they're going to house and catalog and audit physical gold to use as a payment system. And that's part of de-dollarization. So I think price discovery is absolutely in question here. Like, what is the price of gold, especially when the dollar starts to lose hegemony and it's continuing to lose hegemony every single day? What happens when we get to a certain point, as far as dollar usage? That's an open question. So I don't know. It's funny because this goes back to something David and I were talking about. Everybody becomes a millionaire, like at some level, the dollar crashes and loses more purchasing power. It's kind of irrelevant. You just have to remember gold is stable. Even though they've increased the amount of gold that's, in the last 100 years, there's just more people on Earth. There's more entities that hold it. So inflationary wise, gold still buys the same amount of land and oil and food and clothing that it did 100 years ago per ounce. It's
Hmm.
just everything that in the middle, all the fake stuff and all the currencies can keep you very confused. It's like, well, did it go up? Gold was $35 an ounce. Now it's $4,000 an ounce. Well, relative to what? It's because the dollar lost purchasing power and there's more, the supply of dollars increased like some insane number, as far as the money supply is concerned. So I'm very bullish on things that are finite. And that doesn't even
Hmm.
have to be gold or silver, but it's outside of counterparty risk. And the big entities are already doing that. So
And
just
I'm
watch what
bullish on
they
things that are not digital. That's the key thing to me because when you look at how they're rigging this whole thing, I mean, I don't want to have anything to do with a gold ETF. I don't want to have anything to do with a gold-backed coin, because you get a gold-backed coin, great, except they're still going to be able to track you, and they're still going to be able to prevent you from having a transaction. Even if that thing is backed by gold, they have the ability to preemptively shut down your being able to process transactions with it.
Counterparty risk. Always remember, if it's not in your possession, then you've got counterparty.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, at the end of the day, you've got counterparty, and sometimes that's okay. Like the super wealthy, they don't keep all their gold in their house. They can't. You would be crazy to do that, because you would put yourself at risk. But at a certain level, just the more levels you have, especially if you're in the paper, that's not good. I mean,
That's right.
a counterpart in this world, in this realm of where we are, and I don't think we've even begun to see the craziness, the fallout from this system. I mean, we're not even close to that. So I'm bullish, and even if I'm bullish even outside of the price, David. I like, to me, if I've got cash, I'm turning it into metals.
Yeah, I agree. Well, congratulations on navigating the regulatory hurdles there and getting your trademarks there for Wise Wolf and Wolfpack and so forth. And people can get to Tony through davidknight.gold. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for joining us. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.